Very good morning. Welcome to Headline Focus here live on Core Politics with me, Rob Double. And what a morning it has been for UK politics. Obviously, this comes a little bit later than usual, but for a very good reason. A significant amount of news to try and get through in the next few minutes. So let's start off with what started the real ball rolling, and that is Dominic Raab, the Brexit Secretary, has resigned. He resigned earlier this morning. Here is his resignation letter and his tweet confirming it. Now, there are two issues why he resigned, but it fundamentally is based around, of course, the draft withdrawal agreement between the UK and the EU, which was published yesterday in the evening for everyone to look over and to actually see. And that follows, of course, the cabinet meeting that happened at around 2 o'clock yesterday, which broke up in the early evening as well. Now, the two main reasons are, as he outlines in his letter, the regulatory regime on Northern Ireland. He says it presents a very real threat to the integrity of the United Kingdom. And he says the second one being the indefinite backstop arrangement. Now, he says, I cannot support an indefinite backstop, saying it's too extensive to be bound by a hybrid of EU customs union and single market obligations. So the obligations on the UK are too severe for the UK to be bound to without having any democratic say in obviously how those rules and regulations are created, nor the ability, and this is a crucial factor I'll go on to in a minute, the ability to decide when to exit the backstop if the backstop is initiated. Now, we'll explain that in just a sec. But he says as well, in terms of negotiating the future economic partnership, he doesn't agree with the fact that it could be taken as a starting point for negotiating the future economic partnership with the UK and the EU, and saying it will severely prejudice the second phase of the negotiations against the EU. So that happened. That was to start. And then we have got another cabinet minister resigning as well. Esther McVey, Work and Pension Secretary, submitted her resignation to the Prime Minister as well. Second cabinet minister. We then have three other ministers who have also resigned, including Shailesh Vora MP, Northern Ireland Minister, and Suella Fernandez, Brexit Minister as well. What is the impact of this? Well, in most obvious terms, a leader which loses cabinet members over a policy which is significantly entwined to their leadership. Theresa May has put huge personal emphasis on the Chequers plan and what has come through now in terms of this draft withdrawal arrangement. There are going to be questions about whether there's going to be a vote of no confidence against her, or at least she has really lost the mandate to be able to lead the Conservative Party and then de facto be able to continue as Prime Minister. Now, she's in the Commons at the moment. The Prime Minister is in the Commons receiving questions. One of the most notable ones was from Jacob Rees-Mogg, influential backbencher, key individual in terms of the Brexit opinion on the backbench of the Conservative Party, asked the Prime Minister this morning whether he should submit his letter of no confidence to the 1922 Committee Chair, Graham Bradley. Apparently now, according to reports on the newswires, he is going to submit that letter of no confidence, and the impact of that might be who follows him, and will it be enough to trigger that vote of no confidence measure in the Prime Minister. This is going to be happening in the next few hours, so if there is a day to keep on the newswires in terms of politics, today is the day. The second aspect of this is, will this agreement get through Westminster? This agreement in its draft form has to be able to be voted on by MPs and Lords and has to be passed by a majority. Now, from what we're hearing in the Commons from this morning, if you've been watching, it's looking pretty bleak. The DUP have pretty much said that they cannot support it. In fact, the leader of the DUP in the Commons saying that Theresa May hasn't really listened, and indeed there's no point really discussing it any further, because what they have said in terms of concerns they've already said previously, and this withdrawal agreement very much indicating that they cannot support it because it does not fulfil what they said their red lines were to Theresa May. If that happens, if there is no agreement in Westminster, then what happens to the Prime Minister Theresa May, and also what happens to the Brexit process as well? Is there a delayed Article 50 process? Do we crash out on a no-deal scenario? These are significant questions which are coming to the forefront now, and now we're talking about the reality of the agreement. Certainly, in terms of the way that I've been watching it this morning and what's been going on in the Commons, there's very few MPs willing to get up and support the Prime Minister and support this draft withdrawal agreement, one of whom is Nicky Morgan, who's a prominent MP, former minister. She's pretty much the only one I saw this morning who was getting up to actually support what the Prime Minister has put forward. So keep a lookout on the newswires today in terms of what's going on there. Let's just have a look very quickly at the withdrawal agreement. I appreciate that it's 500 and something pages long, so we're not going to be able to get through it in the next few minutes. But the key points are, it was not unanimous in Cabinet. It did not receive universal support when the Cabinet meeting happened yesterday. Reports are that at least 10 ministers, or I think Sky News said at least 10 ministers are opposed to it. Obviously, some of them have made it very clear this morning, Dominic Raab and Esther McVeigh. In terms of the transition period, it cements that 21 months long. UK would continue to follow all European Union rules. And giving time for businesses and politics to prepare for the after transition when the new arrangement actually happens. It also gives, the transition period gives more time to negotiate the UK-EU future relationship. Now, both sides say in the withdrawal agreement they will use their best efforts to ensure that a long-term trade deal is in place by the end of 2020. Possibly as well, there's a mechanism to extend the transition period. If this doesn't happen, though, if there is no agreement at the end of the transition period in terms of a trade relationship, by July 2020, the backstop is initiated, and this is where a lot of MPs are particularly unhappy, this whole idea of what's going on with this backstop. Now, if the backstop is initiated, it's a joint UK-EU single customs territory. Now, that means you remember all the issues about the Northern Ireland being in the customs union, the rest of the UK not, and etc. This is not the case. The whole of the UK would be inside this customs union arrangement with the EU and will remain so until a new trade deal is met. Now, why is this important? It's because there is no mechanism, or at least very little mechanism, for the UK to unilaterally be able to withdraw from the backstop arrangement if the UK government and the UK decide that it's not in their interest to stay in this backstop arrangement. Indeed, the party which wants to leave has to notify the other that it wants the backstop to come to an end. A joint ministerial committee would then meet within 6 months to consider the details, but it says if the Union and the United Kingdom decide jointly that it is no longer necessary, then it can happen. So it has to be a joint decision. It cannot be unilateral, and that means that MPs are concerned that the UK is to some extent locked into a backstop proposal if it happens. Now, this is obviously just an insurance policy, but this is a key problem, because how can the UK negotiate a good trade deal, good future relationship, if basically it cannot leave the relationship it's in? There's no mechanism for it to walk away. This is one of the key components as why you're seeing MPs getting up and saying they cannot support this draft withdrawal arrangement. Another aspect, Northern Ireland would stay aligned in the backstop to the UK single market rules, or stay more aligned to the UK single market rules that are essential for the avoidance of a hard border. And also, this customs union single market mechanism would include corresponding level playing field commitments and appropriate enforcement mechanisms to ensure fair competition between the EU27 and the UK. So the backstop, the UK would, according to this backstop, be governed by level playing field commitments, aka regulations in terms of the level playing field between the UK and the EU, and enforcement of that, aka they would have enforcement procedures put on the UK to ensure that this level playing field is maintained. Bear in mind the UK cannot leave this unilaterally, means it's bound to these regulations and enforcement mechanisms as well. That's a rough lowdown. There is 500 and something pages to get through. There is many nuances, but that is, as far as I can see, the main issues which are coming out in the forefront in the Commons at the moment. One more story then coming through, of course, still to do with Brexit, and that is what's going on in the EU. The EU Special Summit has been announced by Donald Tusk, the European Council President. It's for leaders to sign off on this draft withdrawal agreement on the on the EU end. That's going to be on the 25th of November, so next week. Or rather in 10 days. Tusk has said it's in order to finalise and formalise the Brexit Agreement, and it's going to be also follow from a preparatory meeting of EU National European Affairs Ministers, and that could take place on the 19th of November. That's pretty much it for the moment. No doubt while I've been speaking, there have been some more developments on the newswires, so keep a look at that. And also what we're doing here on Core Politics on our Facebook page and Twitter right here. I'm obviously going to be tweeting out today what's been going on at RJHChannel. And if you've got anything you want to talk about or anything I haven't covered or you disagree with something I've said, the comment box is below, and also check me out on Twitter as well. But from me and all the team here, we'll probably be bringing you another Headline Focus tomorrow morning with some more breaking news.